Welcome to my first game review, and what a game to start on. For my first review, it seems only fitting to review a game from a franchise that I've never played before, so let's begin with Ninja Gaiden 4, the Masta review. Ninja Gaiden 4 is a high-octane action-adventure hack-and-slash single-player game developed by Team Ninja, together with Platinum Games, and published by Xbox Game Studios. Directed by Masakazu Hirayama and Yuji Nakao, it is the 7th game within the main Ninja Gaiden universe, and it serves as a direct successor to Ninja Gaiden 3 from 2012. It's available on PS5, Windows, and Xbox, and was released on October 21st, 2025. Now, being a first-time Ninja Gaiden player, how does the game play as a newbie? Does the story group players into wanting to invest time into this game franchise? I'm going to break down the key aspects of the game, scoring each section and aggregating them into a final score for the game. Let's start with the story and narrative. So the story follows our protagonist Yakumo of the Raven clan, a new character in the series, serving to make the game more approachable for newbies to the franchise. And the game takes place in a near future Tokyo, where the city is cast into a bleak, rainy cyberpunk-like setting due to the husk of a defeated dragon coiled around the city. The game does a pretty good job in presenting the setting to new players, and I didn't at any point feel like I was missing something at the beginning of the game, having not played or anything of the previous entries. The game sets you on a mission to assassinate a target within the confines of a facility controlled by a group called the Divine Dragon Order, or the DDO as they're referenced in the game. And they have the city of Tokyo locked down. So it's in quarantine, and the story unfolds after the confrontation with your target. The story itself, it's pretty reasonably well paced. Keeps you engaged throughout, and you're set a task to destroy 4 shrines that are guarded by strong monsters presenting cutscenes at each encounter. Though it is here where I'd probably draw my first criticism within the story, in that there is little development between Yakumo and you, the player. At no stage do you really have a chance to form an attachment with him and the people that he interacts with. Now, Yakumo's main companion in the game starts off as a bit of a frenemy and progresses to developing some feelings for them, and looks like they become friends, but at no stage do you really see this growth, other than the game just telling you that it's occurring. So it kind of brings down the tone of the game later on in a couple of important scenes, and you never really feel any genuine emotion from your end. You have no pretty much investment into these characters other than how the game is showing it to you. So these lack of attachment and bond to these characters, it just doesn't pull at your heartstrings at any point, really. So for that reason, I believe the story is fairly average sort of tale for this sort of game. It's not bad, but it's not remarkable either. There are some flashback moments in the game where you get to control a different character later on in the story, and probably much to the delight of people who have played the Ninja Gaiden series before, as it seems like a character that's been a part of the series. And this plays well, though probably almost too well. It makes Yakumo actually seem kind of weak when you're playing with him. And it kind of makes you to have wanted to have played with this character from the beginning of the game instead. So it's a little bit of a drawback. Now, the dialogue between the characters is fairly engaging, and other than my previous criticisms regarding the way in which the game is just showing how the characters come to feel rather than letting you build these emotions with them, it serves its purpose pretty well in the world, and it kind of puts the setting in the right place. Now, the story can be completed in about 12 to 15 hours in your average sort of playthrough. So it's a fairly respectable length, and for the type of game it is, it feels fairly appropriate. Now, the game culminates in a variety of big battles with major characters, and it resolves in a pretty expected but satisfying manner. So for that reason, I give Ninja Gaiden's story and narrative a 5 out of 10. It's an all-round average effort, but I get the feeling that this sort of franchise isn't really here to sell you a story, and it's kind of more about the gameplay. So let's delve into the gameplay and mechanics. So I'm just going to I'm right out and say it. This game tested me. My patience, reflexes. I found it hard, and that was playing it on normal. But also not so hard that I wanted to walk away from it. Kind of hard in a way that I just wanted to continue and improve. Ninja Gaiden 4 is a game that definitely makes you feel strong the more you learn its systems, moves, and enemies that you're facing. And boy, does it feel pretty rewarding when you get it right. Now, when you're getting it wrong, well, let's just say you might want to play in a padded room, because you're probably going to be wanting to throw your controller across the room fairly regularly or pick up your keyboard and smash it into tiny individual keys. Now, the mechanics of the game revolve around a simple system of blocking, dodging, staggering, and parrying. At no stage do you really need to master all of these. You can kind of get through the whole game by just engaging with block, dodge, and stagger. Now, like most action games, enemies present with normal attacks, and then a sort of unblockable major attack that's going to stagger you if you try and block it. But it also gives you the opportunity to stagger your enemy if you hit them with an empower attack within that window. Now, mastering the precise timing for block, parry, and dodging is really, really rewarding when you can pull it off. Though it does come with some substantial drawbacks, especially when you miss on a major attack. So sticking to mastering these during a normal attack is probably best when you're starting off. And once unlocked, you can get a bunch of moves where you can combo these sort of perfect dodges and parries and blocks into these counters, which are quite powerful and can substantially make fights against tougher enemies easier. Now, the introduction of the game is kind of like one big tutorial for all these mechanics, and it sets you up pretty well for the rest of the game. The game also does a pretty great job of letting you practice these moves at set locations as you reach certain checkpoints throughout the levels, where you get to spend a bunch of currency like Ninja Coin on character progression traits that work across all your weapons throughout the game, of which you get 4. Each individual weapon has its own set of moves, which you can invest into with a separate currency earned from defeating enemies. Each of these weapons has their own scenarios and settings and in which they excel, and you're probably naturally going to gravitate to a favorite as you play. The list of moves can be a little bit overwhelming at first, but kind of in conjunction with the practice areas that you encounter, you can kind of learn to master each specific move itself, or just do a practice battle. So I would say the path to success is there for you, and I would really highly recommend doing it, as it's going to make for a less frustrating playthrough than trying to brute force your way through each encounter and learning the game that way. Overall, the movesets follow the same sort of pattern across all kind of weapons. So it makes it kind of easy to swap between weapons, though it can be a little bit frustrating if you've bought certain movesets within one weapon, but then not in another. So until you've unlocked those sorts of things, you kind of are pigeonholed into the weapon that you've been upgrading on. Now, difficulty is pretty consistent throughout most of the game, with the beginning being slightly more forgiving given that you're still in the learning stages, especially against formidable foes that work as bosses at most ends of chapters. Now, some of these formidable foes ramp up in difficulty substantially, and each boss feels kind of as hard as the other, as the difficulty and pacing stays pretty linear to how well you're mastering the game and the combat system. So it's kind of a linear progression. The bosses get harder, but you kind of get better. So you kind of feel like you're battling at the same level from start to finish. Now, where this changes, and likely intentionally so, are the purgatory levels, where you're rewarded with weapon, currency, and ninja coin for defeating a bunch of waves of enemies, and sometimes you get a formidable foe here or there. You can kind of scale the difficulty of this relative to how hard you want it to be by sacrificing some of your maximum HP that's available to you, which substantially scales up the rewards as well. Now, a few of these kind of drove me insane, because the difficulty between some of the purgatories felt different to others. And I kind of touched upon this earlier, when you get another character available to play in the story, those purgatories feel way easier with this second character. I almost very easily defeated it on the full 75 HP reduction compared to Yakumo, the main character of the game. So I feel like the balance wasn't really 100% there. Now, once the game's been completed in all chapters, you're able to replay the game, obviously, and it opens up all the different chapters for you at any stage. You get an increased difficulty, there's an extra weapon, and both the characters that you play in the game are available. You also get some ninja trials for special challenges. There's test of valor missions, which are very similar to the Purgatory, in which case you can scale the difficulty as you like. And you get some extra side content with missions. And from there on, you can kind of test your ninja skills however you like beyond the story. So replayability is there after you finish the main campaign. Now, the combat and the mechanics, they are definitely the shining point of this game, and despite the many deaths and frustrations across the whole game, I think it's a kind of a part of the experience. As long as you're appropriately using the training area in the first quarter of the game, you're going to enjoy how the rest of this game plays out. So for these reasons, I'm going to give Ninja Gaiden 4's gameplay and mechanics a 9 out of 10. Next up, graphics, level, and art design. Now, the game looks great, and the futuristic Tokyo setting is a joy to look at, particularly when you get a fairly expansive look at the city and its enormous size in some of the settings. The character art, the weapons, the combat visuals, they're all very impressive and with very little faults, though there is kind of one major drawback in the design, and I would say that's in the level design. Your freedom's pretty limited throughout the game. Not uncommon in an action hack and slash genre type of game. You've got a linear path, you just traverse and kill enemies throughout that path. But when you have a game like that, your surrounding settings and backdrop really need to make you feel like you're in a broader world. Unfortunately, many of the levels just feel like a set of drab corridors. In the case of moving to some mountainside levels, you just get a bunch of plain cliffs and rocks with a little variety. And, you're just feeling like you're moving from one similar setting to another, facing a bunch of enemies, killing them, and moving on to the next bunch of enemies. I think having a broader and more expansive backdrop between enemy fight locations, or even in the backgrounds of certain locations where you're fighting your enemies, would have made for a much more immersive experience and would feel like you're in a much more expansive world, or at least give you the illusion of one without having the need to explore it. Now, some chapters do this well, such as throughout Tokyo when you're flying and traversing from building top to building top, and when you're exploring underground sewer nightclubs with all their flashy lights and enemies. Where the game does this best, I feel like, is when you're facing most of the formidable enemies. Usually provides a fairly nice setting for these fights, but unfortunately it's kind of only a small portion of the game. You need it to exist throughout all level design to really bring you in, I think. So for that reason, I think Ninja Gaiden 4's graphics, level, and art design gets probably a 5 out of 10. Smack bang on average. Now, how does the music and sound compare? So the sound design is pretty satisfying. And it matches the combat, I would say, perfectly. It provides great sound cues for important abilities, as long as you're paying attention to them, of course. In conjunction with the soundtrack, which is also matching the tempo of whatever situation you're in, each situation feels like an engaging and exciting fight, even in your most basic of combat moments against your most basic of foes. The voice acting, having played in English...
Hey there! Come on in. You're the priestess?
That's me.
Then you die. Here.
My. Straight to business, I see. That mask. You're a ninja of the Raven clan. Come to end my life like in your prophecy, I'm guessing? Blackened rain beckons, our bloodlines immense. Through the death of his priestess, must the dragon be cleansed. You have no idea, do you? What your prophecy really means.
What?
Doesn't feel like a terrible dub over what the original voice acting is in Japanese. And I feel like a lot of heart and soul went into the English version, as opposed to many other games where they have some very lackluster dubs. So overall, the music and sound, they match the combat well. It never tries to be more than it should be in pretty much all settings of the game. It never tries to be very grandiose, and it's always letting the combat and gameplay mechanics do the talking. It's a solid contribution towards the fun that you have with this game, and for that reason, I'd say Ninja Gaiden 4's sound and music gets a solid 7 out of 10. Now, how does the game perform on a technical basis? Any game of this genre, regardless of how good it is, can really crumble down if it performs poorly, especially when combat responsiveness is paramount in such an unforgiving game. Gladly, at least on PC, I can say that the game performs amazingly well, and at no stage did I encounter any hitching, freezes, load freezes, frame spikes, or anything that I would use it as an excuse for dying on a fight, unfortunately. Now, because of this great optimization for this, Ninja Gaiden's technical performance gets a perfect 10 out of 10, no faults. So now we come down to the final score for Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden 4, it's a solid entry in the franchise. I think it serves as a good entry point for new players such as myself. It's by no stretch of the imagination a perfect game, but its solid combat and gameplay experience really pushes it above average, and it only is let down by some fairly average level design and narrative elements. So the Masta review aggregates all areas that we've covered into a final score, with each section contributing a different rating towards the final score. So the weighting system goes as follows. Our story and narrative is about a 20% contribution to the final score. Gameplay and mechanics is worth 35% of the final score. Then our graphics, level and art design, our sound and music, and our technical performance sections all contribute 15% each. So if we recap all of our scores out of 10 and their contribution to the final score, we get the following. So our story and narrative was a 5. So its weighted score is 1. Gameplay and mechanics was a 9. Its weighted score 3.15. Graphics, level and art design a 5 with a weighted score of 0.75. Sound and music was a 7, giving a weighted score of 1.05. And technical performance at a 10, giving a weighted score of 1.5. Aggregating all of these together, the Masta review final score for Ninja Gaiden 4 is a 7.45 out of 10. If you're looking for an engaging and rewarding combat experience that's going to test your gaming skills, definitely give Ninja Gaiden 4 a try, especially if you have Game Pass. It's on Game Pass, no harm in giving it a try. And with some extra DLC coming in 2026, there's going to be some further story content being available and some further challenges. Thank you for watching my first gaming review. Hoping to review more games in the future, and in the meantime, I'll continue to produce full gameplay story playthroughs on the channel and other content as time allows. Until then, happy gaming and catch you in the next one.